All right, so this week we're going to work on a project, and what you're going to do is you're going to recreate something inspired by this picture by Vasily Kandinsky. It's his composition number 8. Now, this is a great work of art, and what I want you to do is use the shape and color functions built into P5JS to build something inspired by this. So far, so good. You are going to be working in groups. Now, I know everybody hates group projects, but I'm going to tell you how collaboration works in this class. What's going to happen is each person in the group will be responsible for 2 or 3 different elements of this picture. So far, so good. So as a group, you will decide who's doing which pieces. All right. Then each person will go off on their own and they will write code to make just their pieces. You with me? Now, once you have your pieces done, you will email the code or the edit link or whatever you need to do, probably the code, just copy and paste the code, to each of your group members. So far, so good. And then you will take your group's code and put it together in a final composition. All right, make sure we all understand this. You are going to create a piece of code that might make, say, these concentric circles up in the top corner and maybe this series of arcs in the middle of the screen. So far, so good. Then you will wait for your group members to email you their code. All right, let's step back. First, you and your group members will decide who's doing what. So I might be working with Mr. DF, and I'll say, hey, Mr. DF, I'm going to do these concentric circles in the top left corner and this series of arcs in the middle. And Mr. DF would be, great, I'm going to do this grid pattern over on the right-hand side of the image and this big triangle piece in the middle. So far, so good. And then Mr. Hines says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do these other concentric circles around the screen, and then this series of arcs near the top center of the screen. And we'll say, great. Then we will all break free, and we will write our piece of code. Once you are done with your piece of code, so once I get my concentric circles and my series of arcs, I'm going to take that, and I am going to submit the edit link to that code in P5 for the first submission for this assignment. Then I'm going to wait for Mr. Hines and Mr. DF to send me their code. Once they send me their code, I'm going to take their code and I'm going to take my code and I'm going to create a brand new sketch in P5. And I'm going to take all 3 sets of code in a brand new sketch and bring them together. Now this, you got to think about this a little bit because you can only get one setup, which means you're going to need to take the pieces from each of their code and put it in yours. Now, be sure to indicate with comments who wrote each section of code. So far, so good. Then you'll run it and make sure it works the way it's supposed to. And then I, in this case, would submit that as the second assignment, the final submission. So far, so good. At the same time, Mr. DF has submitted his piece as his first submission, and he's taken the code I emailed him and the code Mr. Hines emailed him and brought it together and submitted his own version of the final project. And Mr. Hines does the same thing with Mr. DF's and my own code. So far, so good. So you will have 2 assignments that you submit. The first is your own code all by itself. The second is you make a brand new sketch and you put all 3 pieces of code together in a way that makes it run. And again, you can only have one function setup, which means you're going to have to take pieces, right? The piece from inside the setup, and you're going to have to bring it all in together. Okay? You're going to have to do a little thinking about how these functions work to make that actually happen. So far, so good. And then you submit that as the final piece. Okay, so that is your entire project for this week. Now, the A group has the advantage of at least being face-to-face on Tuesday to talk to each other about this. The B group is going to have to virtually get together on Tuesday, right? So Tuesday, you have to talk to your group members and decide who is submitting each piece, all right? And then how that is going to happen. So far, so good. You have to do that on Tuesday, so that you'll be ready to bring it all together and ideally have it all finished up on Wednesday when you're in class together. You don't want to start on this on Wednesday. You need to start on it on Tuesday. Make sense? All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop comments in to ask me those questions and or reach out to me via email. Probably comments on this assignment would be best. That way, if other people have the same question, I can answer it at one time. All right.